Good morning, Uncle. Good morning, says Confusion. I'm the first. Greetings, Uncle B. I hope you're doing great. Yeah, Uncle B, that's a good one. Good morning, everyone. Britt Simon here. Happy Saturday morning. Welcome to the live session. I'm talking to you from California, and it's cold in California. It's a little bit cold. It's been raining. So anyway, let's get into discussion about Greencard lottery. Good morning to some of you. Sorry to keep you waiting, Milan. Didn't mean to keep you waiting there. Let's see. What are the chances of AF58K? It's not a problem. I do want to talk about this. What's the chances of AF58K and DV26? Can you show how probabilities are calculated? I do want to talk about that subject, not necessarily specifically for your number, but I do think that a lot of people will have been confused by the visa bulletin this week. So that's a topic I'd like to deal with straight away. And I know I'm going to get a bunch of questions on it. So let's talk about that. Let me just present my screen. Hold on one second. And we'll do this one. Okay, so here was the visa bulletin published this week, right? We had a big jump in Africa, big jump in Asia, quite a small jump in Europe. I'll come to that in a minute. Only increased by 750 numbers, and then nothing for the other three regions, right? And so that is confusing to a lot of people. They're wondering what's going on with that. Not that. I don't want to go to that side. Hang on a second. I want to go to the public side. That one. Right. And I want to go to the visa bulletin numbers. Right. So first thing I would say is I think some of you probably don't understand how high the numbers are at the moment. Some of you are still panicking about the numbers. But if we look at, for example, let's start off by looking at Europe. Europe is now 8,500. Yes, it was higher in the previous, 3 or 4 years there, but it was lower in 2021 at this same point. It's been around about this number previously, and in those years where it was low, it actually went current later anyway. So, the fact that a number is, the first point I want to make is the fact that a number is low at, visa bulletin number 4, after only 4 visa bulletins, when we have 12 visa bulletins, doesn't mean you should be freaking out, right? You should be calm. You should be not worried about that. The number on a month-to-month basis is not really very important. It's not a mathematical sort of calculation to say, okay, they only increased by 750 numbers. There are 8 left. 8 times 750. That is not how we do the numbers. That's not how it works. That's not how any of the process works. So don't get all sort of worked up about that. Similarly, I wouldn't go in the other direction either, right? So Africa just jumped from 17,500 to 35,000, doubled its number in 1 month, and that's clearly higher than any of the recent years, right, in terms of a number. And it's a very big increase. But do we think it's going to go up by 17,500 every month? No, it won't do that, right? And so, you don't sort of look at 1 month, and particularly after only 4 months, the first 4 months of progress, and say, oh, it's going to do that every month. Whether your estimation is pessimistic, if you're feeling in Europe and you're feeling a bit down, etc., or you're in Africa and you suddenly think, hey, we're going to go current because it jumped by 17,500 in one month. Neither one of you is necessarily correct. Whatever mindset you have, that's not necessarily correct. What you need to do is think about what is happening behind the scenes. Why is it doing that, right? Why did the number jump in that way? If we look at Asia jumped by 50%, big increase. Look at how that compared to last year and previous years. It's never been at this level at this time of year, right? I mean, I say never. I mean, if I go back many years on at this time of year, 4th one down. If I go back many years, back to when Bangladesh was included, then yes, it was probably going to those sort of numbers, but that's 10 years ago, right? So, you have to think about why this is happening, not the number necessarily. I don't want you to freak out because you see a low number or a high number or whatever. I want you to think a little bit more carefully about what's going on. So let's talk about what's going on, okay? Now, the visa bulletin jumped nicely. It went to 35,000 for Africa, Asia went to 15,000, and Europe increased by 750. If we think about why these two regions in particular were able to move so fast, what would be the reason, right? And it's the travel ban. The travel ban is the reason. Let's have a look at the countries impacted by the travel ban, right? I've color-coded this to make it easy, but these are the countries impacted by the travel ban. There are 19 countries impacted by the travel ban, 16 of which are have selectees in the lottery process, right? And some of you might say, well, there are only 12 countries banned, and the other countries are partially banned. Yes, but the partially banned countries are banned for immigrant visas. So as far as DV lottery is concerned, they're banned, right? So there are 19 countries on ban, 16 of which impact the numbers, and they are mainly in Africa and Asia. There's one country that is banned in Europe, so that's 2,542 selectees out of a total of 44,733 selectees, right? That's 5.68% of all the selectees in Europe are under a travel ban right now. Not that impactful. But look at Asia. Asia has 5 countries banned, and that represents 53% of all the selectees in Asia. So of course Asia is going to go faster. Of course it's going to be difficult. The only thing we didn't know up until probably this month, I would say, is how quickly the ban took effect on people's desire or their willingness to submit the DS-260. The ban was introduced at the beginning of June, and so the announcement of the results had come about 4 weeks earlier. And so some people will have immediately submitted their DS-260 from banned countries, right? Those people's DS-260s will have been processed, and those people could even be scheduled for interview. However, by June, a lot of people saw the ban, realized that Trump's a moron, and that the ban is probably going to ruin their chance, and they probably said, oh, I won't submit my DS-260 at the moment, right? And so that is going to be impactful, for the process as a whole, right? If we've had less people from banned countries submitting their DS-260, that means that the DS-260s for other countries will be faster to process. That means that if they didn't submit their DS-260, those people won't be scheduled for interview. And it means that there'll be less people available when they move the visa bulletin numbers up, right? If we look at Africa, Africa has a sort of also quite an impact. A number of countries from Africa banned, representing almost 24% of all the selectees in Africa. So again, a huge hit to Africa. Now, how does that actually affect the process? Well, let's look at this a little bit more for Asia. I just did this a few minutes ago. If we look here at the countries selected in DV 2026, I've marked the ones that are banned in this green color. And so the remaining countries are relatively small in terms of the number of selectees that they have, right? There's 1,092 in Jordan. Sri Lanka has 1,028, so a couple of them over 1,000. And of course, Nepal. Nepal has nearly 4,000 selectees, right? But generally speaking, the countries that are left are the smaller countries, and the impact of the ban in Asia is enormous, absolutely enormous, right? Let me show you something. No, I want to show you something, actually, something else. Let me just bring up another. I want to show you this chart that will make this a little bit clearer for you, I think. Yeah, here we go. This is the distribution, right? When we look at the distribution of Asia in particularly, and I'm looking here at DV 2025 data. We don't have this data for DV 2026 yet. Of course, we'll get it in January, I believe. I actually have to talk to you about that. There's a glitch, but I think we're going to be okay. But if you look at Asia, Asia is broken up into essentially 3 chunks. There are winners from Nepal, there are winners from Iran, and then there's the rest of Asia. Okay, and then there's holes, right? So something like 40 to 50% of all the case numbers in Asia are going to be holes, right? Actually, it's going to be more than that, because I think there's going to be around about 12,000 cases, and case numbers will go to about 30,000. So there'll be a lot of holes, 18,000 holes and 12,000 cases. So more holes than cases. But in the early few thousand, what we have is we have excuse me, we have the Nepal cases, who will be selected in high volume for every 1,000 case numbers up until a certain number. We don't know the number yet. I don't know the maximum case number, but in DV25, it was about 11,500, I believe. And so I'm just talking from memory. And then Iran went further. Iran went to about 15,000 or so. Actually, let's just see if check it on the actual, the actual distribution. Oh no, Iran went to about 23,000. But it's the same concept. I'm just trying to get the concept across to you. So in every 1,000 case numbers at the beginning of the case number range in Asia, let's say 50% of the numbers will be a whole. 20% or so of the case numbers will be from Iran, about 20% from Nepal, 18% probably, sort of 15 to 20%, but let's say 18% will be Iran. And then the rest of Asia will be that bottom sort of 20%, this 20% here, that will continue up until the highest case number, which will be about 29, 30,000, right? So we think of Asia as being 3 buckets of numbers. Now, if we ban all of the Iranians, right, which is what Trump has done, he's banned the Iranians, and he's banned probably, getting on for more than half actually of the rest of Asia. There are a lot of people here that are just not able to process, and out of the number of selectees that we have, there's only about 11,000 people who are unbanned at the moment, right? There's 4,000 from Nepal, they're not banned, and there's about 7,000 people from the rest of Asia. That's a massive hit to the the population of Asia, and it means that high case numbers in Asia are very likely to go current, right? I say very likely. I mean, I think it's very likely. If the travel ban stays in place, there are not enough people in Asia who are selected but not banned to actually take all the visas, right? They actually wouldn't even be able to take all the visas. They wouldn't even be able to hit the quota for Asia, because there'll be a lot of people who won't proceed. There'll be people who will proceed but get denied at the interview and so on. And so out of the 11,000 or so, selectees, we probably wouldn't yield 8,000 or nearly 9,000 visas issued, which means they won't even hit the quota. That means that high case numbers in Asia are probably going to get current, right? Maybe they'll go current for the whole region, but certainly if you're in any number, even if your number is 20,000, perhaps even 25,000, you can be pretty confident that you're going to get current. And because it seems there has been an impact with people not submitting their DS-260s, that could happen quite quickly, right? We might see Asia going to very high case numbers quite soon. So that's what happened in Asia this month. Now, I have to say, I didn't really expect a big increase for Asia, because I didn't know this factor of how many or how few DS-260s have probably been submitted from the banned population. The banned cases, if they submit their DS-260, if they had submitted prior to June 4th, I think it was, when the travel ban was implemented, if they submitted their DS-260, they will be scheduled for interview, right? But they cannot be issued with visa at the interview. And even if they can be issued for the visa, they can't enter the USA, right? So that's why Asia is moving so quickly. Africa, similar sort of thing. Just going back to Asia for a second, try and think of it this way: if I want to yield 5,000, no, not 5,000. If I want to yield 500 interviews, right, and only 1 in 10 cases can be interviewed because their DS-260 is processed, they're from the rest of Asia and they're not banned, right? Then I've got to make 5,000 numbers current in order to yield 500 interviews, right? And that's basically what just happened. They moved the numbers by 5,000, but actually that probably only yielded a few hundred cases of people that could be interviewed, because most of those people in that number range would have been from Iran, Afghanistan, Yemen, and so on, right? They would have been banned. And they probably didn't submit their DS-260 in that first 3 or 4 weeks. And so they now haven't submitted their DS-260. That's basically what's going on in Asia. In Africa, similar sort of story, not quite such a big impact. About 24% of the population is under travel ban. But you can see the same sort of point. It's going to be very impactful to Africa. And I expect Africa high case numbers to get, to get good movement of the case numbers up until 50, 60, 70,000 quite quickly. Okay, so the other thing is that regions that we don't know the distribution of for DV26 yet, but the way that the distribution of cases happens tends to be a higher density of cases in the early few thousand range, because as countries get limited, as you can see on the screen right now, countries, this is an effect of Iran being limited and Nepal being limited during the draw. That's what makes the distribution of cases go lower in later case number ranges. So as we get to the higher case number ranges, again, there are not so many people in those higher case number ranges, and case numbers can actually move quite quickly. So in previous years, you'll see some acceleration of the case numbers in well-functioning years when we got to the higher case numbers where the density of cases is lower, right? I'm hoping you're following that. I think this topic probably deserves a conversation of its own, probably deserves a video of its own if you're not understanding. But I'll try and gauge from the comments and from feedback I get whether this is clear to you or not. So that's Asia, and Africa to an extent is the same sort of story. Nice increase in the numbers, but that won't have yielded very many interviews. Of course, being current doesn't guarantee that you're going to get an interview. There are some situations, some embassies, which are not keeping up with their current cases yet. That's not necessarily a problem in the first 3 or 4 months, but we do need to see those embassies start to behave well in January and February and March and so on. Okay, and if they continue to move the visa bulletin numbers high quickly, then it will give us a good opportunity to get as many of the visas out as possible to Africa and Asia, and that's important for Europe, funnily enough, which brings me on to Europe. So people are freaking out a little bit because the number only went from 7,750 to 8,500. And I have to say, I don't really know why it was that small of an increase. I expected a bigger increase than that. However, there's only one country, Turkmenistan, that is travel banned right now. It's only 5.7% of the population of selectees for Europe. And so the travel ban isn't such a big impact. But Europe stands to benefit greater than any other region from the underutilization of visas in Asia and Africa, right? Europe will be the biggest beneficiary of that. But for that benefit to happen, it needs them to move the visa bulletin numbers fast and to issue lots of visas to where they can to Africa and Asia earlier in the year than they've been doing the last 3 or 4 years. So so I'm quite pleased to see Asia and Africa moving quite quickly. And if you're in Europe, just calm the heck down. It's month 4 of 12 months, right? Just relax, chill out. You're going to be fine, right? This is going to be a year because of the travel bans, which is sad in a lot of ways. Because of the travel ban, though, it's going to be a year where Europe can do well, where Asia will have a good result for those people not banned, and Africa will hopefully do well because they'll push the numbers as fast as possible and get as many people through as possible. Although a lot of this depends on the reaction of the embassies, right? Okay, so I'm hoping that's all making sense. Let's see some of your comments and see if that really is making sense to you. Okay. Let's answer some questions. Hey Joe, how you doing? Joe, 160k. Yeah, good to see you. No snacks this time. Getting a takeaway later though. Good. I know Joe's taking everything in good humor, but yeah, being 160,000 in Europe is probably not quite so comforting. Mind you, having said that, Joe, if the government make Europe current because the other regions are not going to use their quota, then current means current. Current means every number is equal, right? And so you're going to have to hang around, buddy, because you may be even at 160k, you may get a chance, because at least they are doing what they have to do in order to make that a possibility. So it's only month 4. I can't really be certain what they're going to do, obviously, for the remainder of the months. But what they would have to do in order to make, in order to take advantage of the travel ban for redistribution of case numbers to Europe and so on. Europe, Oceania, and South America would all benefit. In order to take advantage of that redistribution, they have to operate early. They have to get high case numbers as quickly as possible to Asia and Africa in particular. So what just happened in Asia and Africa is actually a good thing. Okay, let's answer some questions. Simon, I have 3 wives and 4 children at the time of registration. Oh my gosh, imagine that, 3 mother-in-laws. I love my mother-in-law, funnily enough, but 3 mother-in-laws, good lord. So 4 children, okay, 3 wives and 4 children at the time of registration. I listed my first wife as the principal spouse and the other 2 as derivatives along with my children. Is this correct? No, you're going to get, no. I'm afraid you've ruined your case because you didn't read the bloody rules and you didn't ask me. So you have caused yourself disqualification, my friend. The law for polygamous countries where polygamy is legal, the U.S. immigration law says that they will only recognize the first marriage. The other marriages, second and third marriages, considered bigamous and non-valid marriages, which means that you included 2 adults on your original entry that you were not entitled to include, and for that you will be disqualified if you decide to go to the interview. You can't do polygamy in the USA. They've got strict rules about that, except for certain states. And really, this should have been something you looked into before you entered the other 2 spouses as derivatives. They were not your children. And you've basically added them as children. There wasn't a section where you could say second spouse, third spouse. So no, you just do it along with it. So yeah, no, that's not the right way to do it, and you will be disqualified. Sorry to be so blunt, but I'd rather be blunt with you and save you the hassle of going through the process, paying all the fees, etc., and then getting disqualified at the interview. So it's best you hear the truth, and I've given you the technical explanation as to why you'll be disqualified. Okay, let me know if you need further information about that. You're a lucky boy from LV. Can I sponsored green card holder to my sister? You can't. You can't, as a green card holder, you can't sponsor a sibling. You have to wait until you're a citizen to sponsor a sibling. So it takes a long time, and sponsoring siblings right now, the backlog for that is something like 12 years, I think. So it's going to take you 5 years to become a citizen after being a green card holder, and then you can start the process to sponsor a sibling, and that takes another 12 years or so. The faster way of doing it, funnily enough, is probably wait until you're a citizen, sponsor your parents if they're alive to become green card holders, and then they can sponsor their children, your siblings. That's probably the faster path, but at least currently. Oh dear. Cough, cough, cough. I didn't realize I had a sore throat this week, but I didn't realize I've not been talking very much, so it's making me my throat go bad again. Never mind. Let's see. Any updates about DV27? No updates about DV27. We know they're going to do DV 2027. It's absolutely clear they will. But they've not announced when that will start. So we don't know anything. We don't know. We assume that the $1 fee is going to be part of it because that's the reason for the delay, according to their public statements. I assume the passport rule will not be a part of the new instructions because they've not made any moves to make that an official rule. But we don't know for sure. We have to wait and see what the instructions include. Okay. Good morning. I am case number 3027. Next week interview. I'm Kevin. Well, hello, Kevin. Good luck for your interview. Is obesity a problem in DV27? No. Half of America is obese. Well, more than half. So being obese in America, I saw I think it's a jokey thing that Trump was saying he wasn't going to allow obese people to emigrate to the USA. Why the hell not? There's plenty of fat people here already. So I don't know why we would restrict chubbier people. I was recently approved for DV26. It's been 2 weeks, still waiting for the passport. Location Mumbai. Just be patient. You'll be all right. Dear me. I'm surprised by the Asia bulletin. I feel the number is too high. What do you mean by too high? Too high doesn't make you happy? I mean, why is it too high? I did just explain why it's gone so high. There's very few cases have been revealed by that additional 5,000 increase. I suspect it's probably about 500. Nepal didn't increase at all. Nepal's progress is totally dependent on Kathmandu embassy, so they will just operate at their own speed, and that's not a cause for concern for the Nepalese applicants. Nepal normally gets very, very close to the 7% quota, so it's not a problem for Nepal. When's the potential start time for DV27? Don't know yet. I'm guessing it will probably be announced in the next 2 or 3 weeks, and the entry period I think will start in December. But I could be wrong. It might be January before we actually have an entry period. I just don't think it's going to be very much later than that. Okay, let's see. Would you consider the fact that Europe only increased by 750 people? Would I consider the fact? Is that a question? It seems like half a question. I did consider that fact, but I don't think it's a problem. Okay, I think it's just month 4 of 12, and they're really trying to push Africa and Asia, and that's a good thing for Europe. So just chill out, relax, you'll be fine. Is it opening anytime soon now that US government is open? I don't know how many times I said this, the shutdown did not affect the DV lottery period. Man, oh man. Let me just see if I can do something here. I'm going to send my wife a text. She's going to love this. Bring passport. Okay. Right. That's a nice way to summon your wife. It's a bit rude, but I hope she'll be fine with that. Anyway, the shutdown is not what caused the DV lottery entry period to be delayed. The delay of the entry period was already in place. The delay was already happening before the shutdown started. The entry period should normally have been announced in September, and the shutdown didn't start until the 1st of October. So the fact that the delay was there was known in September, right? That's why it wasn't announced in September. So there's nothing to do with the shutdown in terms of DV lottery. It's just not a connection. It's not a thing. Okay. So, oh, you're a dog. Thank you, Hannah. Thank you very much. That'll help. Thank you. Okay. Hello, Sir Britt. Sir, I have a question about DS260 processing. It seems to take a long in Algeria, considering that there are case number 18K. It takes long. It takes longer in certain countries because certain countries' information gathering, police records, and that sort of thing is not so good. There are certain countries which have a very high degree of cooperation with the USA. For example, the UK, Canada, and so on. There's several countries, I think there's 5 countries, which have an information sharing agreement with the USA. In those countries, DS260s can be processed extremely quickly. For example, in DV25, because of the lawsuit, there were UK selectees added in August. People that submitted their DS260s from that, and they were announced on August 8th, I think it was, which was a Friday. On Saturday and Sunday, people submitted their DS260s. And those DS260s that were submitted over the weekend were processed by the Tuesday. It took them a day and a half or so to process those cases, turn them around, and actually schedule people for interview. So by the Tuesday and Wednesday, we had interviews being scheduled just literally days after the announcement of the UK winners in DV25, right? And that's because of the information sharing that goes on between those countries. So there's really no sort of delays. With Algeria, I'm guessing, I don't know, but I'm sure there isn't that level of information sharing, and perhaps the information systems are not quite so advanced in those countries. So that's why it tends to be a bit slower. There's also more concern in some countries about fraud, about terrorism, and so they're looking into certain countries more than others when they do the DS260 processing. Okay. We've been waiting for your update on the headline topic. Yeah, I'm sure you have. I saw your notification, so I joined you live. Good. Is it possible to reschedule the interview date? A friend of mine is waiting for a passport to be processed. In general, I just answered a question about this morning. I often tell people this is not like having a hairdresser's appointment, right? It's not something you put off on a whim. Firstly, you do everything you possibly can to try and get all your documentation in place for your interview date. You've had plenty of warning about this. There shouldn't be a delay. But also, if you have to attend the interview and you're missing a document, even your passport, then attend your interview anyway on the scheduled date. Because although you can reschedule, it's not very easy to reschedule, and in some cases, the embassy will sort of screw it up. And so you don't want to put yourself in that position. It's far better to attend the interview and follow up with the missing documents a week or two later, or whenever it happens. And then during the interim period, you're just going to be on 221G. Okay, so that's what you should do. We should apply in the middle or first days or at the end. There is literally no difference at all about when you apply for the lottery. It's a random draw process, and every year we get the data, and the data shows very clearly that the time of entry makes no difference. The date of entry, etc., makes no difference to your chance of being selected. So just apply whenever you apply. It doesn't matter whether it's first day, last day, somewhere in the middle. It doesn't matter whether it's a Tuesday. It doesn't matter whether it's in the evening or the morning. None of that. None of that is a problem, or none of that is a factor in the draw. Okay, so I'm going to have to go shorter on this video than I would normally go because of my throat. It's really weird. I hadn't realized my throat was going to be so bad. So, okay, it's a bank statement. Is a bank statement required for the visa interview? Sometimes they will ask you for financials. Yes. Sometimes they might expect you to fill in or to have an I-134, which is an affidavit of support from someone in the USA who promises to look after you financially if you need that, right? Or you can show your own savings by showing statements, bank statements, and that sort of thing. And you should have, I would say, at least $10,000 per person if you're going to try and pass the interview purely on your own savings. Now, they don't always ask for an I-134 or statements, but they can do. They're entitled to do so. And so if they do ask for that, you should be prepared. Okay. Okay. So confusion is still waiting for the wisdom on how to get ahead in the USA. Yeah. Save money and invest money. Actually, it's not enough to just save money. You have to save and invest. Don't fall into the trap of spending all the money you earn. If you find you're not earning enough to save, then you've got to change your job. You've got to take a second job. You will only get ahead in the USA, financially speaking, if you save money and invest it. It's the only way. So I'm going to try and explain that in a more detailed video, but that's basically the message that I'm going to be giving you. Okay. What do you think? Will they make the passport a requirement again? I think they will eventually. I just don't think it'll be for DV27. Maybe DV28 or beyond. How much money should I have in my bank account for DV27? Yeah, they. $10,000 is about the amount of money you should have if you want to qualify on your own savings. That's $10,000 per person, and that might sound like a lot of money to a lot of people, but it is not a lot of money in American terms, I can tell you. Okay, hope you and the family are doing well. Regarding the recent lawsuit, do you have any explanation from KCC regarding the mega high case numbers? Just more of an update surrounding the lawsuit. Ryan, I think I've explained it well. I know what they've done. They're not going to admit what they've done, to be perfectly honest. I don't think they're going to give me the information that I would like, because the information that they can give means that they've screwed up again. There's no logic to it. It's not like they wanted to do what they've done. They've just screwed up. Thank you, Annie. And there's no other explanation for it. I know you're probably still looking for some logic, but there isn't any logic to this. They've just made another mistake. It is absolutely clear to me from the 1303 selectee number that we have for the UK. That's far higher than than any other country in the region. Similar country like Germany, France, Italy, Spain, none of them have got that number of selectees. And Germany has quite a good organizational capability for entering the lottery with some agencies and so on. And so, we're over double. The UK selectees are over double even Germany. So, second year of being able to enter, not many people will have known. It's unbelievable. I mean, not believable that that enough people entered the lottery in order to produce 1,303 selectees. And if I then take that number back to what I consider more reasonable, it's very obvious. It explains why there are case numbers all the way up to 180, 190k. But the answer is that they selected people without a numerical limit until far too late. And that means that they selected too many winners from the UK, more than any other country by percentage, more than any other country in the region. And that is against the law. So it's a screw up for sure. Now, are they going to admit that to me in the lawsuit? I don't think so. I don't know. I think they're going to try and obfuscate that particular nugget of information. And I can try and fight to make that point, but it costs more and more money to fight to make that point. And I already know the answer. So, at some point I'll have to say the lawsuit achieved its goal. It already has achieved its goal, which was to create the UK winners. It did that for DV26 and 27. I think it will have fixed the problem for DV27 as well. Sorry, it did that for 26 and 25. It will have fixed the problem for 27 as well. And that was the main goal. Having transparency of the information and having control of the process were sort of secondary hopes of mine. But the main goal was to get the people, get selectees selected, which was achieved. So, I have to weigh that up now and say, okay, from my own back pocket point of view, do I want to continue to spend money and time and energy and so on, of the lawyer's time and so on, and my own energy and everything else? Do I want to continue to do that in order to make the point that I already know? It's tough. It's tough to make that call. Okay. I have a different mother's name on my undergraduate certificate and my birth certificate. My mum later changed her name, so in my birth certificate it's her new name. Will it affect? Different undergraduate. Why is your mother's name in your undergraduate certificate? That makes no sense to me. Okay. Your educational certificate is not where your name is proven from, right? Your name is proven from your birth certificate to your parents, and from your passport. The undergraduate certificate, why it would have your mother's name on there, I don't know. If you mean it has your mother's name because that was part of your name, then that makes a little bit more sense. But your mother's name, it doesn't make a lot of sense. And she changed her name. She changed her name later, so in the birth certificate, it's her new name. Again, that doesn't make sense. Well, I mean, her name will have been changed presumably through marriage, let's say. That's why it's in your birth certificate. Your story is not really making a lot of sense. Your birth certificate preceded your undergraduate certificate. But basically, don't worry about your undergraduate certificate other than proving that it is your educational document, right? They don't look for your educational document for your name, your legal name, or your date of birth or anything like that. They look to the documents that proves that, which is the birth certificate and your passport, okay? Okay. Regarding the vaccination question in the DS260, I selected no, and I will take the vaccines before the interview in the medical exam. Will this have any effect? No, that's exactly the right way to handle that question, in my opinion. The no answer in that question actually relates to whether you have documentation to prove that you have the vaccines and the documentation in accordance with US law, which you don't have, right? So, so yeah, so it's fine. What you did is fine. Okay. Another question from the same gentleman. Also, I mentioned I work for a company that I've recently moved to another one. Will this have any effect? No other effect. Random theory time from Ryan. Okay, this will be fun. Could it be possible UK selectees for DV26 have been massively over-selected due to only a small selection in DV25? Just a theory. No. Absolutely impossible. You're suggesting that they somehow put their thumb on the scale, and no, that would be wildly illegal, not technically possible. It's not how it works. No, I've explained, Ryan, I think pretty well how the draw process works, and the numbers that people have got is their correct numbers. Nobody has been inserted into the draw process as a later thing. The 43 cases that were selected in DV25 was the right number of cases. That was 43 under 23,000, but it was the right number of cases. What's wrong is the number of people selected in DV26, but that's happened because they've continued the numbers to the high numbers. This is the case, Ryan. You have to trust me on this. I know you're looking for logic and other explanations and everything else, and this other random theory is the latest example. I'm right on this, 100% right. I know what's happened. You just have to accept it, buddy. You really do. Okay. What was that low number for EU? So we're so disappointed. Yeah, I've already explained that. Submitted your application around a month ago. Is it normal not to hear anything at all? Yes, it is normal not to hear anything at all, because there is a period of DS260 processing time, which takes time. So yeah, it's absolutely normal. Greetings from Switzerland. Hi Joe, how you doing? How is your wife doing? You said when you said MRI last stream, I actually said PET, PET. Hopefully it's not the disease I think it is. It is. I wish her quick recovery. It won't be quick, but she will recover. So thank you, Joe. Thank you for asking. Yes, your mind went to the right place. I'm sure it starts with C. It sucks, but I mean, you wouldn't believe the number of people that we've spoken to who've been through the same thing, and they've all got through it. And my wife will get through this. She absolutely will. So thank you for asking, Joe. Taban Media. Hi Simon, DV winner from Afghanistan, banned country, but I have cousins in the USA. Any waivers or exemptions for any lawyers in the USA? No. The exemptions available for the travel ban really are to the benefit of the USA, not the applicant. So the only real exemption that you can have, there's two that I consider to be real. One is that you've got a second passport from a second nationality of an unbanned country. And the second is that you are a member of a religious minority in the country where you're at. And that might work, but I don't think that's going to work very well for DV lottery. Having relatives in the USA, tough luck. That's exactly what they intended. The travel ban, the travel ban impacted people mostly on family-based immigration. In other words, they deliberately set out to ban Afghans and Yemenis and Iranians, etc., who have family in the USA, like you have, right? They deliberately tried to do that. That's what they wanted to do. It sucks. It's cruel. It's mean. But that's what they wanted to do. So no, the fact that you've got cousins, etc., won't help you, I'm afraid. Just it sucks. I prefer to be blunt about these things, to be honest with you. I don't want to dress up with a bunch of bullshit and give you ideas. There's a guy that drives me a bit crazy in one of the Telegram forums, and his response to this all the time, Ronnie, I'm talking about you if you're listening, is sue them, have a lawsuit. And it's like, why do you keep saying that, you fool? You can't just start a lawsuit unless you think you've got a reason to start the lawsuit, right? You have to have some sort of, hope that you can succeed. And, every time it comes out, if someone says, oh, I'm from a travel ban country, what can I do? File a lawsuit, says Ronnie. It's an idiotic suggestion unless you've got a strategy and deep pockets, right? If you don't have those two things, deep pockets meaning plenty of money, and a strategy meaning, okay, you're going to take on the president's ability to block entry to the USA that's been tested in court multiple times. What's your novel strategy for that then, please, Ronnie? Please explain before you suggest to some relatively poor gentleman from Somalia that he should spend his life savings on a fruitless lawsuit. What's your strategy? If there isn't one, forget it. When I took on the lawsuit for the UK lawsuit, I already knew 99% of what I needed to know. I was just, I was a little unclear how they'd done it, but I was dead certain I was going to win. So, the risk, you only take on that risk of spending all that money if you know what you're doing. Okay. And I think, bless him, Curtis would see this differently, perhaps. But, of course the lawyer is going to say yes to. Okay. What do I think about EU 30,000 and DV 26 Paris embassy chances to be current? You've got some chance. Particularly, I think if they do move Africa fast, if they move Asia fast, and then it becomes very clear to the government that they will have unused visas, then there's a good chance for higher case numbers in EU. So that's what I'd be looking to see. So when you look at the visa bulletin and you're from Europe and you're like all depressed because it only went to 8,500, what you should have been doing is looking at Africa and Asia and saying, yay, they're pushing Africa and Asia. That's good for you in Europe, right? That's what you have to think about. Don't worry so much about Europe. You're in month 4 of 12, and think how Europe will benefit from Africa and Asia. Okay. Good day, Simon. AF68K Dakar Embassy. How will we assess their performance, and would it be good advice to move to another country for a better chance of interview schedule? Okay, good question. So. The way that we assess performance of embassies is with data. We get feedback from the SEAC database, and Zarthisius extracts that for us and puts that into charts for us. Now, the way he gets that data is from the SEAC status tracker. Let me show you something that has come up this week. This is kind of interesting. The status tracker has gone through a change this week, which actually was pretty depressing to see because it's the beginning of the end of our ability to see, I think. But I don't think it'll affect DV26. I think we'll be okay for DV26. They changed this week. They added, as well as the immigrant case number, they want the passport number and the first 5 letters of the surname in order to provide a status. And so what you do is you put in your case number here, AF1, and because I don't know the passport number and the surname, I shouldn't be able to go any further. However, if you read this, it says For applicants who completed their forms prior to January 1, 2022, please put NA into passport and surname fields. And actually, if you do that, and then put in the code, then this works. TWS. There we go. So, so what they've done is they've partially implemented a new requirement for the SEAC system that will give us a problem when we actually start extracting data if they make these two fields required. At the moment, the two fields are not required. You can get around it by plugging in NA. So I think we're going to be okay for DV26 data. But at some point, they might make this impossible for us to extract all the data. Hopefully by then, they'll give us an API. They'll make the data publicly available some other way. We might even have to sue them over that, to be honest. But again, I'm trying to think of a way that would be arguable. Like, they're making the data available. It's just they're making it available, to one case at a time, and you've got to know your own case number. That's actually their intent, I suppose, when they're making this data available, right? So, we'll have to see whether we can overcome that data. But that is a wrinkle that happened this week. They made that modification to the system this week. Interesting, they've made that modification. They can do some things, but they haven't rolled out the entry period. Funny stuff. Okay, is it possible to modify the number of cases in the January visa bulletin for South America? No, it's already been announced. South America and Oceania didn't increase, but they're already quite high numbers, so they didn't really need to increase. I think we'll see an increase next month, right? But again, it's month 4 of 12. No need for you to panic, really. Ryan, I can't explain how defeated I feel after being selected and being given such a high, utter ridiculous case number with no explanation from KCC. I understand it's just a lottery, but it's ridiculous from KCC. There are people who've been going through that feeling for many years, Ryan. In your case, it's particularly annoying, I guess, from your perspective. But other people have had very low numbers and still not been given their chance. So all I can say is this is a brutal, frustrating process for many. It's just the way it is, the nature of the beast. It's like that. So I'm sorry you're feeling that way, Ryan. I get it, but yeah, it does suck. A lot of selectees are concerned about the chronic illnesses such as diabetes due to the new policy. Any need to worry? The government are going to try and make things difficult for sure. That's obvious. They're doing that, but I don't believe the diabetes and chronic illness policy thing is going to be as big a deal as people are making it out to be. When they implemented the change to public charge is already in existence. It's always been there. It's part of immigration law. It's already there. What they're doing is they're tweaking that a little bit and saying that you're going to have to show that you've got insurance if you've got a chronic illness. Well, when they had the insurance requirement previously, they already implemented that in the first Trump administration. We were able to overcome that by showing that people had obtained quotes on insurance and they understood what it would take to get insurance, right? So that was enough to overcome the problem at the time. And I think it will be the same. I think it'll be implemented the same way. So there you go. Do you think AF69K will be current for AF region before July? Wait and see, I think. We'll see. What is the prediction for Australia? Do you mean the max case number? I haven't worked it out yet, but the highest case number I know of is about 3,300 for Oceania region. And I think that we're going to see numbers higher than last year, but I don't know that we're going to get to 3,300 in Australia. We'll have to wait and see. What should travelers from banned countries do to take the visa? They have to have a passport from another country. That's basically it. That's the way to get around it. Hybrid with SA region not moving since. Do you expect a big number jump or possibly going current when it does? Not next visa bulletin. It's month 4 of 12, right? I think we need to do something here. Okay. Let's see if we can sort of make this a little bit clearer. Okay. Here we go. This is good. Okay. This might make it clearer. No, maybe not. I'm just trying to think of a decent graphic I can show you to try and explain why you shouldn't be too worried. But how can I explain this? 4 is less than 12, right? And so that means there are 8 left, right? 8 is twice as many as 4, and therefore we are only 1/3 of the way through the numbers. And at 1850, we're over halfway through. Well, we're nearly halfway through the number ranges, right? So we're fine. We're absolutely fine. You're worrying over nothing. Some of you are freaking out over this number thing, but you really don't need to. It's going to be fine. You just have to relax and be patient. Okay. All right. How is Oceania benefited with travel ban in other countries? Again, Oceania will benefit to an extent because when the visas are underused in Asia and Africa, as they almost certainly will be, then the unused visas can be redistributed to the other regions. So the redistribution happens according to a certain formula, which means that Europe will get more of the unused visas than Oceania or South America. But the impact of extra visas for Oceania and South America is actually quite a big deal. And so it does mean that those two smaller regions, Oceania and South America, can benefit extensively from the travel banned countries in Asia and Africa. So we'll have to wait and see. But the clue to all of that, or the necessary action for all of that to happen, is for Asia and Africa to get to their higher case numbers as fast as possible. So, like I said earlier, when you see a visa bulletin where Africa and Asia increase, and if you're from Oceania, South America, or Europe, cheer on your friends in Africa and Asia, because you want Africa and Asia to go fast. Now, all this could dramatically change if the travel ban is removed, but I see personally absolutely no reason why the Trump administration would remove the travel ban. I just don't see that happening. And so, I'm afraid to say that the travel ban is probably with us for the whole of DV26. And if it is, then Asia and Africa will not be able to use all of their visas. Okay. Okay. Let's see. This is a fairly complex question here. I don't have a college degree, but I'm a fabric and textile sales and marketing business for 20 years. I'm now starting a consulting business. Do you think my work experience could qualify? It's difficult to be precise with such a description, but I would say if you Google the words Britt Simon work experience, you'll find an article I wrote that helps explain how you would organize your proof to try and meet the requirements. So if you actually have run your own business and you've managed staff and that sort of thing for 20 years, then, that's a possibility. If, on the other hand, you mean you pick up pieces of fabric and textiles and you move them around yourself, that's not a sort of a full-size business where you will be doing things like making management decisions, managing staff, making financial decisions, and so on. So it depends on the size and nature of your business, frankly. Okay. So there could be a second draw because of the travel ban. No, I've said a number of times there won't be a second draw, and there won't be a second draw because of the travel ban. Okay. So no, that's not going to happen. Dan, thanks for all your videos, and thanks, Dan, for the support. Appreciate that. DV26 Paris Embassy. I think I already answered your question. It's your dream to move to the US. Like I said, Dan, you have a chance. It's a bit early to sort of get into that right now. When we see the data in January, we'll be able to see where the distribution of case numbers hits and calculate the impact of Turkmenistan on that. Although I think that, like I said earlier, I think it's probably about a 5.7% reduction in the number of selectees that can go forward. So it's not such a big deal. But we'll see the distribution of case numbers and see, other parts of the data, see which countries are under an accept status at that time, and we'll see. But we need the data in January to be able to make a more logical sort of guess about that. Having said that, the math will be blown apart this year by the travel ban impacts, I think. So, it's going to be a wait and see process. You're not really going to know until, probably May, June, July, whether you stand a chance. But it's probably going to be about that timeline before you know. Ryan, again, legally, let's say if KCC only choose 20 to 30 UK selectees that proceed and get allocated visas, surely this would be a very low number. Are KCC required to allocate a number of visas? No, Ryan. I thought, I was pretty sure, Ryan, that I'd explain this to you. Let's talk about the draw process again. Let's say there were, just for round numbers, 1 million entries from Europe, right? 1 million entries. What they do is they jumble all of the entries up and they number every single one of those entries, starting at Europe number 1 up to Europe number 1 million, right? And then they in the real draw, they took the first 50,000 numbers basically, and they went through those 50,000 numbers and they rejected a bunch of people from that initial 50,000 based on bad photos, fraudulent entries, and that sort of thing, right? And so what we're left with is people with case numbers under 48,000 or 49,000 or so, which is about the highest case number for the rest of EU. And that's because of the original sort of random ordering thing. When they then included the UK, they didn't come and do any sort of redraw. All they did was re-reveal or re-allow, or however you want to put it. They had previously made numbers into wholes because those cases were from the UK, and they unholified them, right, and made those cases real. They didn't give people new numbers. They didn't do a new draw. They simply revealed the numbers that those people already had, right? And what they did was they allowed that numbering thing to go up to about 200,000, 180, 190,000. They allowed that process to go up to 200,000. Why they went to 200,000 is beyond me. I don't know why they lost their minds and did that. I can only imagine it's because the person that did that is a complete moron. But they, because in the DV25 process, they were smart enough to only do that up to 23,000. So that they didn't tell people you're a winner, but your case number is 25,000 in DV25. because that would have been cruel, right? To give people that impression that they were a winner, but they were never going to get current, because by the time they did that on August 8th, they already knew that 23,000 was the highest number for Europe. So they only revealed the numbers under 23,000. So they understood the number impact for DV25, but when it came to DV26, they simply let it continue until 200,000 or so. So that's all they did. It's not that they selected people. Those people were already selected. Those people were already numerically in the places where they are at. And you're case number 130K, I think. So, you were already 130,000 position out of 1 million cases. That was always your number. It wasn't anything other than that. All they did wrong was that they revealed people above 50,000. They shouldn't have done that. That's what they did. That's the mistake they made, and they shouldn't have done that. But that's the only thing they did. Okay. Let's see. I'm just trying to see. Talk about obesity. Is it true? I already talked about that. It is not true that they're going to be denying you for obesity unless your obesity is so bad that you are literally physically unable to work and that sort of thing. I mean, if there are some enormous people in America, right? 700, 800,000 pounds in weight, right? Those people, when you get to that sort of size, you're probably unable to get out of bed. You're probably unable to work, in which case you could be considered a public charge. But that's an extreme level of obesity. We're not talking about that. We're not talking about being a few pounds overweight. So that's not likely to stop you from working. Okay. Rashmin, you're waiting for Sri Lanka, from Sri Lanka, and waiting for it to apply for 27. Good luck. Somebody from Lithuania here. In the case of being selected in the DV lottery, should I present proof of financial support like a bank statement? If so, what is the amount feasible to present? Yes, as I mentioned earlier, about $10,000 per person is what you would be required to show if you were supporting yourself. A safer way to go, frankly, is to get an I-134 from a US resident. So that's the better way. Let's see. ABC says, thanks for the tireless update. DV26. My case number is AF31000, submitted DS260 in late May. My case being current at the moment, when would my 2NL be sent and what is expected from me? Good question. So you will be, if you're at an embassy which has adequate capacity to cope with all of the cases that they should take, then you would expect to get your 2NL in the next week to 2 weeks. And then what you do is you then arrange your own medical. You read the instructions, you gather all the documentation you need, etc. Arrange your medical, attend your medical prior to the interview, and then attend your interview. So between the point when you get your 2NL and the actual interview date, there's usually about 6 or 7 weeks or so. That's the time period you have to get your police certificates, your birth certificate, your marriage certificate, all of that documentation. You get all of that together in that time period, and you have your medical performed. That's it. That's your expectation. Okay. Okay. Joe says, I've put on a couple of extra pant sizes since moving to Texas. Yep, there you go. America is full of overweight people. Right. Let's see if there's any more interesting questions, then we'll call it a day. Andrea Saunders, any tips on applying from the UK? If you mean whether to enter or not from the UK, I haven't mentioned. So in DV27, I think the UK will be eligible for entry again. I base that on an understanding of the rule that caused it to be ineligible for a number of years. I think it's going to stay eligible for DV27. And so the process of being selected is a random process. There's no real way to improve your chances, but there is a way to decimate your chances, and that's through taking a bad photo. If your photo is not compliant, you get disqualified from the process even before the announcement of the results. The way to avoid that is to take a decent photo, and for that you should be using DV Photo Tool. I should put up a banner. There you go, banner. dvphototool.com, which is the only site where you can create a DV specific photo for the entry that takes into account and uses AI to try and make sure that photo is going to meet all the compliance rules. It's the only site that does that, and I know that because I am, one of the partners in that site. So it's my site. I wanted to create a site which would, I need to put that back up, which would allow people to enter the lottery and not screw up their photos. The reasoning behind this is that in DV25, 57% of all of the entries that were numerically in the early ranges are made into holes, and only 10% of those are because of fraud, which means that 40+% of people are getting their entries disqualified because they're not able to take a decent photo. So although nothing will improve your chances more than you should have, there is a guaranteed way to make sure you don't get a chance to get selected, and that's by having a bad photo. And that is the problem I'm trying to solve. So yeah, don't do that. Okay. I like this one. Hello, Lucas. How you doing? Hi, top man. That's a very British thing to say. DS260 was submitted on the 4th of October. My case number is EU3696. I've seen other cases that got their 2NLs on other forums. UK soon, do you think? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, London, if you're still in London, Lucas, I'm not sure where you are, but if you're still in London, London's pretty good. And you should certainly get your case processed 4th of October. Yeah, you've probably been processed by now. You could actually email KCC and see if they've finished processing on your case. You could do that, or you could just wait over the next week or two, and you'll probably get your 2NL. All right, so good luck with that. Fingers crossed for you. All right, everybody. Jumbo here. Jumbo Simon in here. Can I add my de facto wife after winning? De facto wife. Considering I applied single because we were not big fear. I don't know what that means. But we were not officially married. Okay, there is no such thing as a de facto wife. You're either married or you're not married, right? When you entered single. If you want to include your wife after winning, your de facto wife, as you call her, you have to go and legally marry her. Legally, okay, it has to be legal in your country, and if that means that there is two processes, one is traditional, and then there's traditional, but there's a legal process that you're supposed to follow up with. You have to go through that legal process as well before you can claim to be married. Okay. So the legal process is what counts for the DV lottery basis, right? But if you entered as single and you have a de facto wife, that's such a strange word, but then you can get married safely as long as you can prove your relationship existed prior to your win. Then it's absolutely safe to get married and include her in the process. Please, don't be worried about that. If that's the best way to do it. I've known some people have been so worried about being disqualified for getting married that they didn't get married, and then they have a big problem later to try and bring their spouse. Don't do that. You can get married. Okay, it's not a problem. Okay, everybody. I'm going to call that a day. Sorry about my throat today. Didn't think that was going to be so bad, but hopefully it'll be better by next week. All right, everybody. Thanks for joining me today. Please do subscribe to the channel. Go check out dvphototool.com, and let's get ready for DV27. All right, everybody. Have a good day. Bye-bye.